Tyree King,
Joseph Schlosser, Morgan Crocker, Robert Carrillo,
Nicholas Glenn,
Jesse Bashaw, Lucas Anderson,
Terrence Crutcher,
Thomas Monet III,
Dahir Adan,
Robert Young, William Ryan, Philip Hassan, Jeremy Swenson, Michael Miller, Charles Dove, Joshua Scott,
Keith Scott,
Michael Goodale, Sandy Duke, Thomas Tucker Jr., Austin Bayer.
Those are the names of the Black Americans who have been killed by police since the last time I posted an Off Monday Ramble video, which was on September 12th.
Those are the names of all the people who have been killed by police or in police custody over the same time period.
As I sit here recording this, it is September 23, and when this video is published, it will be September 26.
Since then, police have been responsible for 4 more fatal shootings, 1 confirmed white, and 3 unconfirmed ethnicity.
That is 5 people, 5 Black Americans who have been killed by police in less than 2 weeks.
Whites and Hispanics are people too. The correct count is 23. All the people that were mentioned, plus 1 more who is unknown. Unknown name, unknown ethnicity.
It should be noted that 2 of those, Nicholas Glenn and Dahir Adan, were in the middle of committing horrible crimes when they were shot by police. Nicholas Glenn was in the middle of a shooting spree, and Dahir Adan was in the middle of a stabbing spree when they were killed by police.
So we were sent on an armed robbery last night. The witnesses and the victim said that a gun had been used. We found a gun at the scene near the suspect that we were trying to apprehend, and this is what that gun looked like. In addition to this appearance, it also had a laser light attached to it right underneath the barrel. Our officers carry a gun that looks practically identical to this weapon.
Why is it that a 13-year-old would have nearly an exact replica of a police firearm on him in our neighborhoods? An 8th grader involved in very, very dangerous conduct. We will investigate this thoroughly and turn over all information to the prosecutor's office.
This guy's still walking and following commands.
Time for taser, I think.
Got a feeling that's about to happen.
That looks like a bad dude, too, to be honest with them.
Which way are they facing?
Police 1, they're facing westbound. I think he may have just been tasered.
Shots fired!
The first caller informed that a male ran from the vehicle saying it's going to blow. Remember, Officer Shelby's en route to another call, but she comes across this at 7:41. Found it abandoned in the roadway. She informs the dispatcher that she's not having cooperation from the person there, and I'm not going to get into more detail on that. That will come out later. 1 shot was fired by Officer Shelby, and a taser was deployed by Officer Tyler Turnbow. I'm going to tell you right here now, there was no gun on the suspect or in the suspect's vehicle. I want to assure our community, and I want to assure all of you and people across the nation who are going to be looking at this, we will achieve justice.
Decision about this video as well.
Here's what I can tell you. I stand behind the truth. People can interpret anything they want based on one piece of evidence, and I can tell you, I suspect they will based on the video footage. But what I say is you have to put all pieces together. We interviewed a lot of people. We've interviewed all of our officers involved, and the consistent themes were the facts. And that's what I stand behind.
And those facts, you think your officers did the right thing? They followed protocol?
What I can tell you is if laws were violated, I would be taking different action. I won't get into policy because that's another parallel investigation that's internal. Well, I can tell you this. There's some people, regardless of what they see, and here's the thing, everybody goes back to the footage. The footage itself will not create in anyone's mind absolute certainty as to what this case represents and what the outcome should be. The footage only supports all of the other information, physical evidence, the statements from witnesses and officers, and all of the other information, scientific and physical, that create the entire picture. So the video footage is insufficient.
So
I've been very clear.
Just remind us how this all began. Was this initially a case of mistaken identity?
No, sir. But all of that will be laid out too. What I can say is there was a compelling reason for them to make this encounter. It was beyond a possession of a gun. It was because of criminal activity that heightened their level of awareness, and they had to change their focus from the priority of taking a wanted suspect off the street to encountering Mr. Scott.
So you're saying Mr. Scott definitely did have a gun, and are any officers being charged?
Officers are absolutely not being charged by me at this point, but again, there's another investigation ongoing. And yes, based on the totality of what we see, he absolutely was in possession of a handgun.
Chief, sources have told us when you talked about the DNA, was Mr. Scott's DNA recovered on the firearm? And since today is a new day, I'll ask you again, was it lawful for him to possess the firearm?
It was not lawful, given the circumstances, but what I can tell you is, the reason I say that is, what I'll say is there was a crime that he had committed that caused the encounter, and then the gun exacerbated that situation.
I still think the ideal is to apprehend criminals alive, even criminals who are in the midst of doing something awful.
Come back here.
Please sit back in the car for me. You were speeding, but right now I need you to... Sir, get back in the car for me now. Sir, please get back in the car for me now. I told you you were speeding. Sir! 5326, shots fired! Shots fired! 5326, shots fired!
Dispatch, go ahead and have him head this way.
That's why we have due process and a judicial system, because we're not meant to be killing criminals on the street without due process and a trial. But nonetheless, I think those two deserve to be considered somewhat differently than the other three who were killed either unarmed, or whether or not they were armed is currently in dispute. And again, their names are Tyree King, who was 13 years old,
who ran from police and pulled a mock weapon on them.
Terrence Crutcher,
who refused to obey orders and continued to walk towards his car and reach into the window.
And Keith Scott,
who also refused to follow police instructions and possessed an illegal firearm.
But I don't want to spend most of this video talking about the deaths, the killings of Keith Scott or Terrence Crutcher or Tyree King. I want to actually spend most of this video talking about something that happened much closer to where I live, much closer to home. And it was an incident that took place last week in Hagerstown. Police last week were involved in an incident with a 15-year-old girl.
She didn't want to stay. We almost had to forcibly keep her here.
So this 15-year-old girl runs a red light, smashes into a car, and the driver says that before the police turned up, they almost had to physically detain the girl because she was trying to leave.
Come here.
Oh, don't touch me. Don't fucking touch me, y'all.
Listen. Hey, listen.
Yo, you're gonna make it worse than what it really is. Seriously,
Don't take all my fucking parents.
Yeah, we are calling your parents. Get off the boat. You're being detained now for cooperation.
For what?
For cooperation of investigation.
Get off of me. Yo, what?
What are you doing? You don't want to do this.
I'll tell you all my fucking name and shit. Oh, stop. God, get off of me. Let my hand go.
To the ground. You're gonna get hurt. Stop. Stop.
Stop. Get the fuck off of me.
Seriously.
I'm not going nowhere.
Well, she says she's not going anywhere, but obviously a minute ago she just tried to ride off on a bike, so what the hell's he supposed to do? She's obviously not sticking around.
Stop.
Bro, tell me to get off of me.
I'm not gonna slam over. No. I'm not gonna do that.
Nah, tell me to get off me.
Get back. Now.
Tell him I'm trying to help him out, man.
Get back.
Record this shit, young.
Get back.
Mom, get off of me.
Get back. Just back up, man. Seriously, just back up.
You let that badge go to your head, man. You let that badge go to your head. Stop.
So what's happened now is the officer has tried to detain the girl refuses to cooperate. The officers have now found themselves in a struggle, which takes them over to the wall. The black guy comes in, he's obviously trying to defuse the situation, but how's the officer supposed to know that? If you look on the video, you can clearly see the black guy's going towards his pockets. He could have literally anything in those pockets. That's not stereotyping, that's just literally the situation that the officer found himself in. Okay, so he's get back, that makes perfect sense.
Stop.
For no reason, I'm trying to help you.
Then turn around. Put your hands behind your back. You're being detained. You're being detained right now.
Bro, get that hard ass shit off. Fuck, y'all, get that shit off of me. Get off.
Stop.
Now maybe this is me being cynical, but she asked her friend to start recording after the conflict had already begun. She saw her friend get his camera out of his pocket, and then she made an absolute scene. She's screaming. I've cut that bit out because I wanted to save your eardrums, but she is screaming while they're trying to put the cuffs on her, yelling, "Ow, my arm, my arm." She's clearly resisting. Anybody with any experience knows full well if you relax, then cuffs do not hurt at all. It's only when you're struggling and they're having to restrain your arm that you're going to cause yourself any kind of injury.
What's your name? Hey. What's your name? 15 to 1. You want to start down here?
She's acting like she's hyperventilating here. He's asked her repeatedly what her name is, and she seems unable to respond. But the only reason that I can see is hysteria. There's no physical assault on her. There was the screaming and the ow my arm. That's not going to cause so much pain that she's unable to speak for literally seconds at a time. Just tell them what your name is.
What's your name?
Give me my shoe.
What's your name?
Oh.
Yep. There's your shoe. What's your name? 15 County, we're already at the PI at Randolph and Locust.
She's now clearly managed to ask for her shoe and request that they don't touch her before she's been able to give them her name. This is clearly not going well.
Not right now. Listen, we're trying to help you, okay?
I'm not fucking hurt!
Well, we need your parent. We need your parent here.
For what?
Because you're underage.
Because they're watching a fucking football game.
Okay, so here's the difference. I mean, it seems an obvious difference to me, but if she'd have stayed where she was and cooperated, apologized for running the red light, maybe she didn't see the red light, I don't know. She clearly didn't mean to hit the car. She's come off worse. She's fallen off a bike, etc., you know? That hurts more than having your car dented. So she's not done it on purpose. If she was just cooperative from the start, there would be no reason for them to detain her. If there was no reason to detain her, there would be no reason for her parents to be involved. All she's doing is making this worse for herself.
Put your feet inside the car, okay? You're gonna get sprayed. Pull your feet in. Pull your feet in. Calm down. Pull your feet in.
Call Zach.
Calm down.
Call Zach. He's an officer.
Zach, who?
So I've skipped ahead now to when the officer has the girl in the car, and he's clearly asking her to calm down. He's explaining to her calmly that she is going to get pepper sprayed if she doesn't cooperate. And she's repeatedly screaming, call Zach, call Zach. So who's Zach?
He's an officer. He's black. He's an officer.
Zach the boy? How do you know Zach?
He's black. He's an officer. So she's a racist little fucking bitch, basically.
But when you watch that footage, when you watch both the cell phone video taken from an objective standpoint and the body cam footage that was taken by officers that were there on the scene, what you see, if you see it the same way I see it, what you see is kind of horrifying and indicative of the underlying problem. The fatal shootings of black folks at the hands of American police are just one facet of a much broader and much deeper problem that affects the way cops interact with civilians.
When you feel powerful, you kind of lose touch with other people. You stop attending carefully to what other people think. In our lab, it's come to be known as the Cookie Monster study. We brought 3 people to the lab. We pointed to one person, we said, you're in charge, right? And so that person kind of felt powerful. And then they had to do this really boring task of like write policies for the university. And they're getting kind of bored. We bring a plate of chocolate chip cookies. Everybody takes one cookie. All groups always leave one cookie on the plate because you don't want to be that person that takes the last cookie. So there's that 4th cookie. And we find high power people, they reach out and take it. And then my grad student, Dan Ward at the time, he came to me and he's like, I think people are eating differently when they have power. And lo and behold, our high power person was more likely to eat with their mouth open, lips smacking, crumbs literally like falling onto their sweaters, you know.
One of the classic examples of twisted psychology is the brutal 1971 Stanford prison experiment. Hand a bunch of regular college-age guys power without reservations and things turn very dark very quickly. But it's not just the top dogs that are corrupt. People stuck in the middle can act horribly too. So think of a prison guard. They have almost no status but a lot of power. power. Because of this, according to a study published in the Journal of Experimental Social Psychology, guards are much more likely to act corruptly. To test this, researchers assigned students to either a high-status title, idea producer, or a low-status title, worker. The students then told other students to perform from a list of 10 tasks. Some were pretty demeaning, like bark like a dog 3 times. The researchers found that students in low-status roles were more likely to make their fellow participants do the more demeaning tasks, concluding that being in a low-status position just makes us feel bad about ourselves, but controlling someone else helps alleviate some of those bad feelings.
It was found later, a small amount of marijuana on her. She was afraid she would get caught by the cops for having pot. She was afraid that her parents would find out. This young woman, by the way, is biracial. Her parents are, her mother is a white woman, her father is a black man, so she is biracial, but she would most likely be perceived by most people as black.
Is it because I is black?
Nobody asked that girl to do anything in those videos. She was never asked to do anything. She was ordered to comply. And when she struggled and resisted and did not comply, she was subjected to greater levels of force. All you see are repeated demands that she obey them. And when she doesn't obey them, they apply force. She was disobeying the officers. She was being disrespectful. She deserved what happened to her. Those officers were using restraint. In fact, the Hagerstown police chief made that point several times. He made it a point to say several times during the press conference that the officers were all over 200 pounds. And they acted with such admirable restraint against this young lady.
I don't really feel the need to draw a conclusion here. I think it's readily apparent, but I mean, this is not a black and white issue. It's not police need better training issue. Your country's full of fucking guns, right? So obviously the police are fucking scared for their lives. So it makes perfect sense that you comply with their orders. Obviously they're going to be scared. It's a freaking scary job. I mean, you don't have to be an intelligent person to realize that, surely. So work it out, guys. I really don't know what you want me to say. This is so fucking obvious to me. It's just accept reality. This is the way the world is. You're the one that's making it hard for yourself if you're one of the people that gets into these kind of conflicts. I've dealt with the police on numerous occasions and I've never been beaten up. Nothing. You know, because I comply with their instructions. It's really not that difficult.
This is what happens when you call the cops. Say what? This is what happens when you call the cops. Come on. This is what happens when you call the cops. You get your rights violated or you all get shot.